Here we're looking at how we can use the paper template to design our keyring ready for cutting on a laser cutter. Whatever we design is going to have to fit into this template box at the top. You can make your keyring any shape that you like, but it's important that everything you draw, every line that you draw is going to get cut. Lines need to be solid shapes and they need to be perfectly closed, which means no gaps in between your lines. You want to try very hard not to have sharp points because they literally can be sharp and quite dangerous. And if you have any long or thin strips, so we're suggesting that are less than 5 mm thick, they just become too fragile and are likely to break off. The bigger the spaces in your keyring design, the more likely it is that it won't break. And lastly, you need to make sure that you realize that the laser cutter doesn't do any design or shading. It will literally just cut the lines that you draw. So very, very important that you don't try and design something that needs shading to make it look like something good. You're also going to need to include the hole for the keyring loop to go in. We're suggesting that should be about 5 mm from an edge. Anything much bigger than that, and it's likely to not fit the ring itself. You need to do your design using a grey lead very lightly. That way you can rub it out when you need to. When you're done with that and you're sure it's right, we'll go over it with a pen, preferably a black pen or possibly a 0.5 fine line or something similar. And after that, you'll need to rub out all the pencil marks that you might have left. Okay, so here I am starting a very simple design. I'm just going to do a very basic smiley face. You might want to use stencils or trace around something to get a better circle shape than I've done. But basically we're just going to be drawing in our shape, and you can see that that's a solid line, no holes. I'm drawing in some eyes and my mouth shape, and each of these will be things that get cut out. So I've got the outside edge of my whole shape, the inside eyes will be cut out, and of course the mouth area would be cut out as well. So each of these are cut out shapes. I also need to include in the little hole roughly 5 mm from the edge, and that's where the keyring loop itself is going to go in. Now this shape is a little bit thin there, but it is still big enough. If I was much thinner there, then I would be likely to break that out. So what I want to do is maybe not have anything that said less than 5 mm in this position. So for example, if I accidentally drew this down here, you can see between the bottom of the mouth and the bottom of the shape, it's way too thin, and this would be a guaranteed area that would break and it wouldn't be very good. So let's clean that up a little bit and just try and rub it out a bit. Again, you should always be doing everything really lightly with a pencil until you're sure it's 100%, and at that stage is when you go over it with a pen. So let's just draw back in the shape that I needed. Okay, so I'm going to use actually a fine texter to start going around this. Again, you don't want to make the lines too thick, so you wouldn't use a very thick texter or a very thick pen. You just want a clear and obvious line so that when these are scanned into the computer, it's very, very clear to the computer where the lines are that need to be cut. Remembering to go over each part of it, including the little area for the keyring hole, and being very careful that we don't now go and make it too thin anywhere. Okay, so now that I've traced over everything that I would like to be cut, making sure there are no gaps, no squiggly lines or anything else, I'm going to very carefully rub out as much of the pencil mark as possible. Basically, if I can clean this right up and have no pencil marks or other lines, the computer should be able to clearly read this and understand what lines are going to be cut, and of course what should be kept for the keyring itself. Now there are a couple things we might just talk about here. So for example, I don't want to have a gap in a line. So if I was drawing this line here, that gap would be a place where it doesn't cut, and of course that would be a problem. I don't want really crinkly, squiggly lines with lots of bits sticking off of it, because again, every one of these little offshoots here would be a part that gets cut, and it would just make a very jagged area. So for example, if I had a little bit of a line there, it would be a problem. So here's a quick version. If I had that and then I had a little bit sticking into my shape like that, I would actually get a cut, and that would be not what I wanted. So I just want to make sure that my lines are really clean and really closed up and as neat as possible. Don't forget to choose the colours that you'd like at the bottom. They're listed here: red, green, blue, black, yellow, clear, or wood. They're generally the colours that are available. Sometimes not everything's available, so make sure you do choose your 3 preferences, and that way you should get at least one of the colours that you're interested in.